I would like to take us over to Vice.
Because it's a distraction.
A little big back better. Little bit back better.
More Bill back better? Oh yeah, I already played it, huh? I gotta play it again.
Just the stuff we have.
Build back better. Build back better. We will build Babylon better. This time,
a new world order.
Psyops.
That's right. Vice did a wonderful job. Now, I gotta appreciate Vice for this reason.
Oh.
I mean, they are sort of a virus of a company. They are they are a drain on me, sort of practically and spiritually. And they're a bad journalistic outlet.
Yeah.
We know this. They're a propaganda outfit.
No good.
But they are the source that is trying so desperately to run. They're sort of running almost like counterintelligence type operations.
It's almost like they're trying to co-opt the conspiracy sentiment.
So I don't think it's co-opt, but you're on the right track. It's like a counter co-op. It's a counter operation because this motherboard, which is the tech reporting by Vice. Headline, the conspiracy verse, which I like very much. The conspiracy verse.
That'll be its own metaverse.
The conspiracy verse thinks, quote, fake UFOs are a distraction from a disastrous train derailment.
Ooh.
So that's an interesting headline. Okay. The conspiracy verse thinks the fake UFOs, they should have just said balloons, but okay. Fake UFOs are a distraction from a disastrous train derailment. It goes like this. A 50-car train derailment on Sunday, February 5th, near the town of East Palestine, Ohio, sparked a massive chemical fire, a temporary evacuation order, and ongoing concerns from local residents about air and water quality as they return home. The derailment is also the latest thing fueling conspiracy theories on the far right and in the UFO world. Many prominent figures in both places are sharing suspicions that the train derailment is being covered up, with help from what one person, the far-right podcaster Stu Peters, called fake UFOs.
Wow, Stu Peters getting in the limelight with Vice, huh? That to me screams plant. Spook.
Well, it's been interesting. We've seen Stu Peters is like the one guy that keeps coming up in all of these articles, specifically the kind of edgy ones like Vice and Wire. They always bring up Stu Peters. Let's keep going. Quote, East Palestine, Ohio, is undergoing an ecological disaster because authorities blew up the train derailment cars carrying hazardous chemicals, and press are being arrested for trying to tell the story. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted on Sunday afternoon, linking to an apocalyptic video containing footage from East Palestine, shared with ominous music. Quote, oh, but UFOs, what's going on?
She spelled UFOs
What's
wrong.
happening? What?
She spelled UFOs wrong. There's no apostrophe.
Okay. What's happening here is the confluence of two important news stories. Now, this is when they go into, Vice is going in to try to explain the world. But there's a couple things I want you to keep in mind. Okay. Number one, we've read, I think it was Wired that did it last time, but it could have been Vice. They describe conspiracy theories as the need to simplify a complicated thing. Okay. So if you're a conspiracy theorist, if you think about conspiracies, if you theorize them, you are trying to simplify complicated things, which is hilarious because in this moment, Vice is going to try to simplify a conspiracy theory. So if conspiracy theories are trying to simplify complicated things, then what does it mean when you try to simplify the simplified complicated thing. The logic breakdown on the whole anti-conspiracy thing, where conspiracies, it's just you're trying to understand the world, and the simplest thing is that there's lizard people and UFOs and all this stuff, which we've pushed back again. Conspiracy theories are anything but the simplest explanation, and that is why people find them so compelling. So you have Vice trying to conspiracy theorize about the conspiracy theory, about what conspiracy theories are. At the same time, remember, they're talking about the balloons or the UFOs being distractions from things, which we agree with here. It's so obvious. And in the word you use, Gons, perhaps co-opt is a word. People thinking that the balloons are a distraction may find this Vice article about what they are. And Vice thinks that it's a distraction from a train wreck, and is quoting and using Marjorie Taylor Greene and Stu Peters, which is already a bit suspicious, isn't it?
Yeah.
It goes on. What's happening here is the confluence of two important news stories: the disaster in East Palestine and the United States shooting down two unidentified objects in the last day. First in Alaska and then over Lake Huron, just a week after a Chinese spy balloon was shot down off the South Carolina coast. Neither situation is exactly unprecedented. Okay, first of all, just a quick fact check. It absolutely is unprecedented.
Yeah, hello.
We've never had a kinetic confrontation with NORAD, the North American whatever it is that they're using to shoot down these balloons. It's never happened. We've never shot down a spy balloon, and we've never shot down 4 spy balloons in 3 days. Okay. So it is unprecedented, Vice, but let's continue. Neither situation is exactly unprecedented. Spy balloons apparently traveled through the U.S. airspace during the Trump administration, although they weren't detected at the time. Got to give them credit for getting that right. And rail workers have begged the general public to pay attention to basic issues of safety and welfare in their industry for years, as Motherboard's Aaron Gordon wrote earlier this year. Those workers warned that conditions in the industry, quote, make the railroads more dangerous, not only for themselves, but for all Americans who live in towns and cities these trains pass through. So there is an interesting aspect to this UFO thing to distract from the train crash, because it is literally Joe Biden who forced rail workers back to work under threat of jail. The union man, Scranton boy, man of the working people, Joe Biden, threatened jail time to train workers to force them to go back to work. And if they quit, they would go to jail. That is your man of the people, Joe Biden.
This is not about freedom for personal choice.
So perhaps to, sort of protect his image, he would create a worldwide alien conspiracy so people don't blame him for a train crash. Maybe. But sure, that's a bit of a conspiracy theory, and that is what's getting pushed by Marjorie Taylor Greene and Peter. It goes on. But coincidences are not allowed to happen in the conspiracy verse, and Green and other far-right figures are working overtime to figure out what kind of cover-up must be taking place. The conviction that the objects shot down by the U.S. military are fake and a planned distraction has prevailed from the UFO world to wherever Peters, the mind behind both a brain-numbing documentary claiming that COVID and COVID vaccines are derived from snake venom, and an equally brain-numbing but more popular one falsely claiming that COVID vaccines are to blame for a mass uptick in sudden deaths. That's annoying. I should have skipped that. They are using way too many words to try to describe Stu Peters. Hangs out and back again. Carrie Cassidy, a filmmaker of sorts who runs a popular conspiratorial website called Project Camelot, shared footage of East Palestine on her Telegram channel, writing, quote, "This is most likely while we're being distracted with UFO talk this weekend." Aaron Elizabeth, a conspiracy theorist who mainly traffics in anti-vaccine and health freedom narratives, also shared footage from East Palestine on Twitter, writing, quote, "Meanwhile, everybody's worried about these UFOs, which turned out to be some balloons, every last one of them, just a distraction. Quote, there's a real-life toxic firebomb, cancer-causing gas explosion, mushroom cloud train wreck in Ohio, and it's crickets from the media," wrote Peters, the far-right podcaster, on his Telegram channel. Quote, "But they sure are all over pretend UFOs." Quote again, "The media wants you talking about UFOs," wrote far-right activist Jack Pacific on Telegram.
All right, we get it.
Jack. Yeah, I know. And so you have Vice on one hand condemning conspiracy theorists for talking about the UFO being fake. So you have sort of pro-UFO Vice article.
Right. It's pro concern.
Implying not that the facts show that it's UFOs, by the way. So they're not trying to say that the facts say that it's UFOs, but they are condemning people for questioning not the facts, questioning not the government narrative, but condemning people for even not caring that they're UFOs. For, it's like not even an official storyline being questioned that they are condemning. They are condemning the idea that the distraction isn't working. If you're not talking about the UFOs, then you must be some sort of right-wing extremist domestic terrorist.
Yeah, they get worse.
The implication that they're giving. So, whereas before it was if you question, say, a COVID vaccine, then you're crazy. In this case, it's if you don't question whether this is a UFO, you don't fit in. You're crazy. You're not part of us, whatever that means. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a weird twist. It's a weird, what's the word? I don't know. It's just sort of backhanded reversal where suddenly, if you're not a UFO conspiracy theorist, you're in the wrong. Let me finish this up with two more paragraphs. In an unusual twist, you can say that again, the intense suspicion over what's happening in East Palestine has led to an accidental support for freedom of the press.
Accidental support for freedom of the press. Right. All right. Okay.
So, of course, because these people are right wing, they automatically don't support freedom of the press because, well, Vice is a trash website. You're right. I don't really support the freedom of Vice, but there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just a podcaster. I'm not making the rules. But they are equating accidental support for freedom of the press, meaning you do not want freedom of the press, with questioning a UFO narrative. Several leading conspiracy figures have decried the arrest of Evan Lambert, a News Nation reporter. News Nation, by the way, is the outlet that Chris Cuomo joined after being ousted from CNN. We've done a whole breakdown on News Nation. But apparently, Evan Lambert from News Nation, a reporter, was arrested on disorderly conduct and trespassing while doing a live broadcast from a press release held by Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. This, too, has been spun into evidence of a cover-up. Meanwhile, the Ohio Attorney General is investigating Lambert's arrest, and Governor DeWine himself has said that he didn't authorize it. More on that in a second. While it is surely never good news when a large number of extremely online people...
What does that mean?
Yeah. Extremely online people, like Vice reporters.
Extremely online. Okay.
Yeah. While it is surely never good news when a large number of extremely online people with big followings are trying to spin up fear and suspicion, like Vice, in this case, it's leading to a lot of attention paid to an environmental disaster. Unambiguous support for a reporter who seems to have been unjustly arrested, and some memes of varying quality. All things considered, things could be, and surely will be again, far, far worse. So if you take away the snark of Vice, they are admitting that it's conspiracy theorists who are fighting for freedom of the press fighting for attention to an environmental disaster, the train wreck, and they just can't give it to it. They got to call it accidental. And in order to accidentally support conspiracy theorists, Vice must bend over backwards to convince you that if you're not a UFO theorist, then you don't belong in society. Wow. Very interesting spin to this whole thing. Who thought 4 balloons getting shot down by missiles would cause such a turn in representation for conspiracy theorists in the media?
You know what's interesting about this Vice article? It's talking about the Ohio thing, but still not talking about the Ohio thing.
Yeah, it gives almost no details about the train wreck that they themselves think should be talked about more.
So CNN Health had this headline this morning: after a train derailment, Ohio residents are living the plot of a movie they helped make. And this reads like a Face Like the Sun video. They're really leaning into that type of thing. Okay, so I'm going to play about 25 seconds or so of the white noise trailer. Truck running into trains. Explosion.
Something that could actually kill someone.
Let's watch a sitcom or something.
No! They're calling it the airborne toxic event.
They won't come this way.
Will we have to leave our home?
Of course not.
How do you know?
I just know.
Okay, what if it's dangerous?
Evacuate all places of residence.
It's the end. It's near the end. Here's what the CNN article says. When Ben Ratner's family signed up in 2021 to be extras in the movie White Noise, they thought it would be a fun distraction from their day-to-day life in blue-collar East Palestine, Ohio. Ratner, 37, is in a traffic jam scene, sitting in a line of cars trying to evacuate after a freight train collided with a tanker truck, triggering an explosion that fills the air with dangerous toxins. In another scene, his father wears a trench coat and hat while people walk across an overpass to get out of town. Directors told the group they wanted them to look, quote, forlorn and downtrodden as they escape the environmental disaster. The 2022 movie was shot around Ohio and is based on a novel by Don DeLeo. The book was published in 1985, shortly after a chemical disaster in Bhopal, India, that killed nearly 4,000 people. The book and film follow the fictional Gladney family, a couple and their 4 kids, as they flee an airborne toxic event and then return home and try to resume their normal lives. Ratner tried to re-watch the movie a few days ago and found that he couldn't finish it. Quote, all of a sudden, it hit too close to home, he said. Which is kind of like, wouldn't you know that going in if you were in the movie, what it's about?
Well, I'm assuming that's why he tried to watch it again.
Maybe, sure. But okay.
But how crazy is that? There was a movie set in East Palestine, Ohio, where a train crashes and creates a crazy environmental disaster and poison gas in the air and poisoning the water, and tells the story of a family dealing with that. And then the next year, the exact same thing happened in the exact same place.
Yeah, but you know what's but listen,
what?
But here's the thing. This type of coincidence, quote unquote, would normally be carried by your alt media personality or whatever, content creator.
Right.
But CNN gets to carry it, which I think is another interesting thing here.
Why was the Vice article not about that coincidence? They didn't even mention. They're trying to make a case that coincidences happen. So stop asking questions. And they don't mention the coincidence that a movie came out last year with the exact same circumstances. I mean, come on.
It's the psyop, man. Officials ordered them.
Absolutely bonkers. This is CNN, you say?
Mm-hmm. CNN Health.
Jeez Louise.
Officials ordered them to evacuate their home last week, a day after Norfolk Southern train carrying 20 cars of hazardous materials slid off the rails and caught fire, threatening to explode. The National Transportation Safety Board is still investigating the cause of the incident. Quote, the first half of the movie is almost exactly what's going on here, Ratner said Wednesday, 4 days into their evacuation. In a way, the movie has provided a point of grim humor about the situation facing the residents of East Palestine, the joke no one wanted to make. Quote, everyone's been talking about that, Ratner said of his friends and neighbors who are keeping in close touch through the crisis. Quote, I actually made a meme where I superimposed my face on the poster and sent it to my friends. He's getting in on it. Scholars, this is interesting, scholars who study DeLeo's work, as the author of the book that the movie was based on, say they are not surprised by the collision of life and art. His work is often described as prescient, said Jesse Cavadlo, an English professor at Maryville University in St. Louis and president of the Don DeLeo Society. Quote, the terrible spill now is, of course, a coincidence. Mm-hmm. But it plays in our minds like life imitating art, which was imitating life and on, because as DeLeo suggests in White Noise as well, we unfortunately become too acquainted with the mediated language and enactment of disaster, Cavaldo said.
How much do you think that person got paid?
I have no idea.
How much do you have to get paid to say that?
I don't know, but that
dude. So we've talked about for years, obviously there's the issue of, or the topic of predictive programming, which is not a conspiracy theory.
No,
that
it's
is a
things that they do.
Yes, it's a thing that they do.
Reveal the plot.
It's well documented. But which is the idea that, you slowly introduce ideas into a
unsuspecting public
society, and use it to sort of preload people for certain experiences.
The emotional response, the legislative response, the whole deal, the whole gamut.
Right. You can sort of guide the response of a population by sort of slowly and surreptitiously inserting that situation in harmless ways and presenting appropriate ways to respond. Yeah. That's a big part of what movies are. Mm-hmm. And not even just in like a government type of way. I mean, that is also just like how our brains work.
Yeah.
We recognize patterns. If it's a pattern, if there's a pattern that we recognize from the past, we sort of try to replay what will give us positive outcomes. So these movies, the whole point is, to introduce a possibility or a situation and then sort of pre-program the way in which a person can handle that situation and get a beneficial outcome. And if you have, some sort of government doing that, is usually act in the way that will benefit the government.
Right.
But to have within 1 year, can you get the actual release date of that movie?
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Whatever it is, but and it was a book before that. So I don't know how the 85.
Yeah, well,
okay,
that's when the CIA is deploying their gamut of thinkers and writers and authors and giving him some hints and stuff, to incorporate.
You see, that makes it even more interesting. Like the book being written for 40 years. What is that? 38 years ago. And then the movie coming out last year and then it happening this year. It had 37 years. Like, even if the book is what predicted it, it had 37 years to happen, and it didn't happen. And it happens probably months after the movie is released. I mean, come on. Now, there's also, besides predictive programming, there's also the issue of magic or ritual. Or, spell casting, things like this. I mean, they're all sort of related in ways, but also considering what we've been talking about with the Super Bowl and public rituals and all that kind of stuff, there's certainly some possibilities there as far as this is concerned. But that is absolutely bonkers. I cannot believe that Vice did not add that in there.
White Noise was released August 31st in Venice and then November 25th. In the United States. So literally 2 months ago. So
1 month, 2 months, 3 months. So 3 months.
Well, in the US, November 25th. So that's
that's what I'm asking. Yeah. So 25th. I wonder how many days. And when did the actual crash happen?
The 5th of
so
February.
25th. That was, wasn't that Thanksgiving?
Maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
It's close.
All right,
It's
let me
around
do
those
some
days.
math.
Yeah. So you're right. It is Thanksgiving. Maybe it did come out on Thanksgiving. So it's the turkey ritual.
14.
One of the things let me just continue on with the article here because there's a couple things to note, and then I have a couple more stuff to show you. A town wonders what's coming home. 5 of the tankers on the train that overturned last week were carrying liquid vinyl chloride, which is extremely combustible. Last Sunday, they became unstable and threatened to explode. First responders and emergency workers had to vent the tankers, spill the vinyl chloride into a trench, and then burn it off before it turned the train into a bomb. Authorities feared that an explosion could send shrapnel up a mile away, but that didn't happen. The controlled burn worked, and the evacuation order for East Palestine residents was officially lifted Wednesday after real-time air and water monitoring did not find any contaminant levels above screening limits.
Great.
Quote,
Sorry, what day did this happen?
5th of February, I believe.
The 5th of February. Okay.
Quote, all of the readings we've been recording in the community have been at normal concentrations, normal backgrounds, which you find in almost any community. James Justice, a representative of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, said in a briefing Wednesday. Okay, so that CNN is going into some of this and explaining what's going on and the EPA's response. And, they're saying, hey, we burned it off. We had a controlled burn and then it was all good. But the reason why they're even having to explain all this in CNN, basically today when the article came out, is because a TikTok video went viral. Imagine that, Basil, a TikTok video going viral.
Wow,
Maybe on
can't
purpose.
imagine.
And this TikToker...
Yeah, you mean the social network that has a big red button on the back end where China can press the button
it's got
and make
G's face
something
on
go
it.
viral?
Yeah. So I think maybe they pressed the button for this one, which explains a little bit more about the whole spill and what happened. It's about a 5-minute clip. I cut it down to 1 minute and 20. So here it is.
So vinyl chloride is really toxic. OSHA has the permissible limit of how much you can be exposed to it during an 8-hour shift as a 1 ppm part per million, average over 8 hours. So prior to this, the biggest spill of this chemical was in New Jersey, where one train car and about 23,000 gallons of vinyl chloride were spilled, but it didn't catch on fire. Now, this crash in Ohio has 5 train cars. These kinds of tanker cars can carry between 25 and 33,000 gallons. Let's call it 250 to 250,000 pounds of vinyl chloride. That's per train car, 5 train cars. There's maybe 1 million pounds of this toxic chemical spilling into the ground and also boiling off into the air. But then it caught on fire. I think this is where the reporting is really bad because no one is mentioning what the byproduct of vinyl chloride burning is. Of the many byproducts of burning vinyl chloride, one of them is hydrogen chloride. Hydrogen chloride is really unstable and latches onto water, like just water vapor in the atmosphere, and that turns into hydrochloric acid. So right now, government officials from the railroad, both the governor of Pennsylvania and Ohio are calling burning off the 1 million pounds of this stuff a success, but not mentioning that it means that we have hundreds of thousands of pounds of acid in the air, potentially.
Well, that's good.
Wow.
Hundreds of thousands of pounds
that's
of
serious business.
Yeah, in the air. Now, something to know here, and I don't know, this is maybe a conspiratorial mind, Basil, but if you go to the wiki page of White Noise 2022, it says here budget 100 million, box office $34,818.
Oh, 34,008. What?
34,818. Nothing compared to the $100 million they spent on it.
No. 31,000 could not be the number.
Well, no, it says right here, $34,818 box office.
That's impossible that it could be only. No, that's can't be true.
Okay. Well,
unless it opened in just one theater.
Well, nobody liked it, but they needed something to boost the views of the movie. And so, hey, real life explosion.
No, yeah, something's wrong. If
This
it
whole
only
thing is
made
wrong.
$34,000, something is very wrong. But listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
If it came out on November 25th and the train crashed on the 5th, 72 days.
Oh, there it is.
72 days.
Of course.
And just in case anybody was wondering what that means, I'm over here at thephoenixenigma.com, an occult website where they go through this sort of thing. The number 72 is a number known in esoteric numerology to be a master number. That is a number which encompasses patterns that replicate in frequencies and vibrations, certain energies of the manifested universe. Woo. But listen to this. I believe there is an as of yet unrealized significance between the numbers 72 and 23.
Ooh, hey, there it is.
So you have an occult master number of days between the movie releasing in the US, and if it only made $34,000, now 33 would have been great, but it only made $34,000. That means they maybe put it out for a weekend in one theater or something, or a very small handful of theaters, and took it out immediately. It's almost as if it's not a release at all. The number is so infinitesimally small compared to what even a bad failure flop movie makes in the American market. So it's really weird that whatever it was, they just put it out for a second, took it off, did something, whatever. To get that number is really crazy. Yeah. But then 72 days later, the occult master number 72 happens for real. The movie happens for real. If we're talking about, spell casting and magic or whatever, if that's the lens in which you choose to look at this through, in this case, which you certainly don't have to. There's others too, but it's pretty weird that when we're talking about public displays of occult ritual, this stinks of it.
Yeah, lots of stuff going on.
Then the balloons came. Gone.
Well, Luke 10:1 talks about the 72 that were sent out. The New Testament when Jesus sends out the disciples.
72 is all over the place.
Yeah, and of course that's the same number as the Table of Nations in Genesis 10 that are there. So it's there's a whole theology there. But one more aspect to this, which was mentioned earlier, is the News Nation guy being arrested. I have the video here. A couple interesting things to note about it. Owned by Nexstar Perry Sook, and it's a publicly traded channel. WG in America, which reaches 75 million homes, has barely made a dent in the news rating. Only 250,000 viewers, so kind of a dying news outlet, which is a great reason to stage an arrest of one of their reporters.
News Nation correspondent Evan Lambert complying with orders while on air, ending his live shot during Governor Mike DeWine's press conference Wednesday. But it's the moment that follows when the situation escalates. 4 officers approach Evan, multiple cameras rolling nearby. Evan audibly explains he was simply doing a live shot in accordance with the rules and the law. You can hear as the situation becomes more tense, Evan says, "Don't touch me." As he begins to walk back toward the press conference, officers remove Evan from the gym and forcibly take him to the ground, cuffing him.
You guys, he's a national correspondent. You cannot do this.
I'm a reporter with News Nation. It's all being recorded right now.
This is horrible.
Because you can't talk to people about doing their job.
The arresting affidavit claims Evan refused to leave when asked, and that Evan was, quote, coming at a National Guard general who then pushed Evan away. That version of events, however, not what we see on video. Evan was charged with criminal trespass and disorderly conduct and placed in the back of a squad car. He had this to say.
What do you want to say to people watching this?
It's tough to do your job in America in 2023, but we'll keep doing it.
So there it is. Kind of a, I don't know, the timing of it all. Again, it's another story where they're not really talking about the Ohio thing. It's adjacent. It is
interesting. They're like talking about, they're referencing the train wreck enough that they don't have to report on it, kind of,
right.
But they can kind of talk about other things in the context.
And it's so egregious that it does seem like it's part of a packaged thing where it's like, we'll take down a news reporter. We'll make the explosion happen. We'll get some attention. Here's the second half of that little interview thing. And this little nugget here I thought was interesting as well.
Guys, I just want to mention, as I did the previous hour, that it's hard for a lot of us to be entirely objective here because Evan sits right across from me in the DC bureau. We are work friends. I can speak to his demeanor and his character. Certainly not somebody that would seek out conflict at all. And I just want to mention also that Evan is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, in our bureau when it comes to having sources in law enforcement and respecting law enforcement. And actually in Washington, D.C., a lot of the law enforcement really respects Evan as well. And so I just wanted to add that as some extra color and some context here. If we ever need anything approved or something that we want to get confirmed by officials in law enforcement, usually Evan is the guy to do it. I just felt like that was an important thing, at least to add in this story, guys.
Interesting. He's known amongst the bureau.
So what exactly was he doing? Was he causing a ruckus, or
no? You can see. Apparently, I mean, what it looked like was he was doing a live report, and then the press conference started, and so hey, you're supposed to shut it down. So he did. He kind of shut it all down, and then the troopers and these kind of security guard looking dudes all approach him. They're surrounding him. And, it gets a little confrontational, but then he tries to walk back in, but they kind of drag him and push him out. It didn't look like he did anything offensive. He was defending himself a little bit, but I don't think he pushed anybody or did anything like that. So
but the original offense was he was just asking questions or
something like that, which he's a reporter.
I'm sorry if I missed it.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. It doesn't make any sense. The only explanation is really to draw attention to an adjacent story, element to the whole Ohio thing. And just to add, I guess you can say add insult to injury or another layer of the onion to the psyop or whatever you want to say. Houston area crash between truck Union Pacific train kills driver, derails 20 plus rail cars. That happened today. So another hazardous materials situation with a train and a truck.
Jeez Louise. Yeah, weird stuff.
It's like the balloons, man. You got the train truck collisions. Now we're going to see them everywhere.
Yeah, they turn up the train crash radar too.
And then they'll create the board of investigating trucks and trains.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, very weird series of events over the weekend. Yeah. My goodness.